The year is 1901. In the heart of Manhattan, on the corner of 5th Avenue and 91st Street, construction workers labor through bitter winter winds to raise what will become the largest private residence ever built in New York City. The man who commissioned this palace will never live to see it completed. His name is Andrew Carnegie, and this is the untold story of his family's estate, a monument to American ambition, industrial power, and the complicated legacy of Gilded Age wealth. Before we journey deeper into the shadows of this magnificent mansion, welcome to the Dark Estate, where we uncover the hidden histories of America's most fascinating homes. If you love exploring the real stories behind these architectural monuments, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button, leave a comment telling us what you think, and support us as we bring these forgotten tales back to life. Now, let us return to the story of the Carnegie Mansion, a tale more extraordinary than any fiction could devise. Andrew Carnegie's path to building the grandest home in New York began not in the drawing rooms of 5th Avenue, but in the poverty of Dunfermline, Scotland. Born on November 25, 1835, Carnegie entered a world on the brink of industrial revolution. His father, William Carnegie, worked as a handloom weaver, a profession that would soon be rendered obsolete by mechanization. His mother, Margaret Carnegie, possessed a fierce determination that would shape her son's character in ways that would echo through generations. The Carnegie family lived in a modest cottage, sharing their home with another family, a common practice among the working poor of Scotland in that era. By 1848, economic desperation forced the Carnegie family to make a decision that would alter the course of American history. They borrowed money from friends and family, selling what little they possessed, and boarded a ship bound for America. The crossing took 7 weeks, with the family crowded into steerage alongside hundreds of other immigrants fleeing poverty and seeking opportunity in the New World. They arrived in Allegheny, Pennsylvania, where young Andrew, just 13 years old, found work in a cotton factory as a bobbin boy, earning $1.20 per week. His workday began before dawn and ended after dark, 12 hours of monotonous labor in conditions that would be considered unconscionable by modern standards. But Andrew Carnegie possessed something beyond mere ambition. He had an insatiable hunger for knowledge and an extraordinary ability to recognize and seize opportunity. He taught himself telegraphy, and by age 16, he had secured a position as a telegraph messenger for the Ohio Telegraph Company. This position brought him into contact with Pittsburgh's business elite, and Carnegie quickly learned that success required not just hard work, but strategic relationships and calculated risks. In 1853, Thomas Scott, superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad's Western Division, hired Carnegie as his personal secretary and telegrapher. This relationship would prove transformative. Scott became Carnegie's mentor, teaching him the intricacies of business management and investment. When Scott advised Carnegie to invest in railroad sleeping cars, the young man borrowed $500 from a local banker, using his mother's house as collateral. That investment in the Woodruff Sleeping Car Company would become his first significant financial success. Carnegie's rise continued through the Civil War years, during which he worked for the War Department, managing military telegraphs and railroads. By the war's end, Carnegie's annual income had reached $50,000, an astronomical sum in that era, and he had invested in numerous ventures including oil, iron, and railroads. In 1865, at age 30, Carnegie made a decision that would define his legacy. He resigned from the Pennsylvania Railroad to focus entirely on his own business interests. He recognized that America's rapid expansion required iron and steel on an unprecedented scale. While others saw steel production as a risky, capital-intensive industry, Carnegie saw the future. He visited steel mills in England, studying the Bessemer process, which could produce steel faster and more efficiently than any previous method. Carnegie understood that whoever could produce steel cheaply and in massive quantities would dominate the coming industrial age. The timing of Carnegie's entry into steel production coincided with America's explosive growth following the Civil War. Railroads were expanding westward, cities were growing vertically with the advent of steel frame construction, and industrialization was transforming the American economy. Carnegie established the Edgar Thomson Steel Works in Braddock, Pennsylvania, in 1875, naming it strategically after the president of the Pennsylvania Railroad, his largest potential customer. Carnegie's approach to business was ruthless in its efficiency. He invested heavily in the latest technology, drove his workers relentlessly, and undercut competitors on price, often operating on thin margins to capture market share before raising prices once competitors had been eliminated. Carnegie's personal life during these years of industrial expansion was marked by devotion to his mother. Margaret Carnegie had sacrificed everything for her family's migration to America, and Andrew remained unmarried, living with his mother well into middle age. Only after Margaret's death in 1886, at age 51, did Carnegie marry Louise Whitfield, a woman 21 years his junior, whom he had courted for years. Their wedding took place on April 22, 1887, in New York City. Louise came from a respectable but not wealthy family, and their marriage was reportedly a happy one, producing one child, Margaret, born in 1897. By the 1890s, Carnegie Steel Company dominated American steel production. The company's annual profits exceeded $25 million, more than $300 million in today's currency when adjusted for inflation. Carnegie had become one of the wealthiest men in the world, yet he lived relatively modestly compared to other industrialists of his era. While contemporaries like the Vanderbilts and Astors built palatial summer cottages in Newport, Rhode Island, Carnegie spent summers at his estate in Scotland and maintained a relatively modest New York residence. This would change as the century drew to a close. The decision to build a mansion on Fifth Avenue came from a combination of factors. Carnegie's wife Louise desired a proper home befitting their social position. Their daughter Margaret was growing up, and Carnegie wanted to establish a family seat that would serve generations. Moreover, Carnegie's philosophical transformation was underway. In 1889 he published The Gospel of Wealth, an essay arguing that the wealthy had a moral obligation to distribute their fortunes for the public good during their lifetimes. Carnegie wrote, "The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced." This philosophy would shape not only his philanthropic endeavors, but also the very design of the mansion he would build. In 1900, Carnegie purchased a plot of land on Fifth Avenue between 90th and 91st Streets from the Spencer family for $350,000. The location was significant. While most of New York's elite clustered between 50th and 72nd Streets, Carnegie chose a location further north, in an area that was still somewhat undeveloped. This was typical Carnegie strategy. He recognized that the city would continue expanding northward, and his mansion would anchor a new exclusive neighborhood. The property encompassed approximately 13,000 square feet of land, significantly larger than most Manhattan lots. To design his mansion, Carnegie selected the firm of Babb, Cook and Willard, respected architects who had designed numerous buildings throughout New York. The lead architect for the project was George Fletcher Babb, who worked closely with Carnegie and Louise to create a design that would balance grandeur with Carnegie's stated preference for understated elegance. The architectural style chosen was Georgian Revival, a deliberate choice that reflected Carnegie's appreciation for 18th-century British architecture and his desire to create a home that would feel timeless rather than ostentatiously modern. The mansion's design called for a 64-room residence, constructed primarily of brick with limestone trim. The building would rise 4 stories plus a basement, covering virtually the entire lot. The exterior would be relatively restrained compared to the Beaux-Arts palaces favored by many of Carnegie's contemporaries, but the interior would be extraordinarily sophisticated, incorporating the latest technological innovations alongside traditional craftsmanship. Construction began in 1901, with Carnegie insisting on the finest materials and most skilled craftsmen available. The construction process itself became a spectacle in New York. Newspapers reported regularly on the progress of what they called the Carnegie Palace. The foundation required excavation to bedrock, with workers digging through layers of Manhattan schist to create a stable base for the massive structure. The steel framework, ironically produced by Carnegie's own mills, was erected with precision, creating a skeleton that would support the brick and limestone exterior. Carnegie personally inspected the construction site regularly, applying the same exacting standards he had demanded in his steel mills. The mansion incorporated technological innovations that were revolutionary for their time. Carnegie insisted on a comprehensive electrical system, with the house wired for electric lighting throughout, a luxury when many New York homes still relied primarily on gas lighting. A central heating system using steam radiators was installed, controlled by a sophisticated system of pipes and valves that allowed individual room temperature control. The house featured multiple elevators, including a large passenger elevator with mahogany paneling and a smaller service elevator for staff use. A central vacuum system was built into the walls, with outlets on each floor where cleaning staff could attach hoses, a technology so advanced that few homes in America possessed such a system. The plumbing systems installed in the Carnegie Mansion represented the cutting edge of sanitary engineering. The house contained 14 bathrooms, an extraordinary number for that era. Each bathroom featured porcelain fixtures from the finest manufacturers, with hot and cold running water, flush toilets, and built-in bathtubs. The master bathroom included a shower, still considered a novelty in 1900. A sophisticated filtration system ensured water quality, while a dedicated hot water heating system with multiple boilers provided reliable hot water throughout the massive residence. Carnegie's interest in music influenced one of the mansion's most distinctive features. The main floor included a music room designed with exceptional acoustics. The walls were paneled in specially selected wood, the ceiling heights calculated to optimize sound, and the room positioned to minimize external noise interference. Carnegie was an amateur pianist and believed strongly in music's civilizing influence. He intended for this room to host small concerts and recitals, bringing great musicians to perform in an intimate setting. The room would later serve as the venue for numerous musical gatherings, with some of the era's most celebrated performers entertaining guests in this space. The library, perhaps unsurprisingly given Carnegie's love of books and learning, received particular attention in the mansion's design. Located on the second floor, the library featured floor-to-ceiling built-in bookcases crafted from oak, with a rolling ladder to access upper shelves. The room included comfortable seating, excellent lighting from large windows, and a fireplace for warmth during New York's harsh winters. Carnegie's personal book collection, accumulated over decades, would fill these shelves. Volumes on history, science, philosophy, and literature, many annotated in Carnegie's own hand. This room was not merely decorative. Carnegie spent hours here daily, reading and working on his various philanthropic projects and writings. The formal rooms on the main floor, the entrance hall, drawing room, dining room, and morning room, showcased the finest craftsmanship of the era. Artisans created elaborate plasterwork on the ceilings, depicting classical motifs executed with extraordinary precision. The woodwork throughout these rooms featured hand-carved details, with different woods selected for different spaces: mahogany in the dining room, oak in the library, lighter woods in the morning room. Marble fireplaces anchored each major room, with mantels carved in various styles appropriate to each space's character. The floors featured intricate parquet patterns, with different geometric designs in each room, all crafted from carefully selected and matched hardwoods. The entrance hall made an immediate impression on visitors. A grand staircase rose from the main floor, its banister carved from solid mahogany, its treads wide and shallow for comfortable ascent. The hall's walls were paneled in light oak, creating a warm but not overly dark atmosphere. Large windows on the staircase landings allowed natural light to flood the space during daylight hours, while an elaborate crystal chandelier provided illumination in the evenings. The floor featured a compass rose pattern in marble and hardwood, a subtle nod to Carnegie's Scottish heritage, the compass symbolizing navigation and direction, qualities Carnegie valued highly. The dining room could accommodate formal dinners for up to 30 guests. The table, custom-made for the space, extended to seat this number comfortably. The room's mahogany paneling created a rich, formal atmosphere appropriate for entertaining New York's elite. A large fireplace at one end of the room featured a mantel carved with classical motifs, while the ceiling incorporated elaborate plasterwork depicting fruits and flowers. Built-in sideboards provided storage for the Carnegie family's extensive collection of china, crystal, and silver. Large windows overlooked the garden to the rear of the property, providing pleasant views during daylight meals. The morning room, sometimes called the breakfast room, offered a lighter, more intimate space for family meals and informal gatherings. This room featured large south-facing windows that captured morning sunlight, with lighter-colored woods and fabrics creating a cheerful atmosphere. Louise Carnegie spent considerable time in this room, managing household affairs and receiving close friends for morning visits. The room connected to a conservatory area where potted plants and flowers provided year-round greenery, a luxury made possible by the mansion's sophisticated heating system. The service areas of the mansion, though less visible to guests, were equally impressive in their sophistication and scale. The basement level contained extensive kitchens equipped with the latest cooking technology, massive coal-fired ranges, multiple ovens, cold storage rooms, and separate areas for baking, meat preparation, and vegetable preparation. The main kitchen could prepare elaborate multi-course dinners for dozens of guests, while simultaneously producing the family's daily meals. Separate from the main kitchen, a breakfast kitchen allowed for quick preparation of morning meals. A butler's pantry connected the service areas to the formal dining room, with built-in cabinets for china and silver, a sink for washing delicate items, and counter space for plating dishes before service. The mansion's staff quarters occupied portions of the upper floors and basement level. At full operation, the Carnegie household employed approximately 30 permanent staff members, including a butler, housekeeper, cook, multiple maids, footmen, laundresses, and Carnegie's personal secretary and assistants. The staff quarters, while modest compared to the family's accommodations, were comfortable and well appointed by the standards of the era. Each staff member had a designated sleeping space, though junior staff sometimes shared rooms. The servants' hall in the basement provided a common area where staff could take meals and relax during breaks, creating a sense of community among the household workers. Carnegie's bedroom suite occupied a prominent position on the second floor, featuring a large bedroom, adjoining dressing room, private bathroom, and a small study where he could work in complete privacy. The bedroom maintained Carnegie's preference for relative simplicity, fine but not ostentatious furnishings, excellent lighting, and comfortable but understated decor. Carnegie rose early, typically by 6 in the morning, and he valued a bedroom that promoted restful sleep without excessive decoration. Large windows provided views of the garden and, in the distance, Central Park. The adjacent study contained a desk where Carnegie worked on correspondence and his various writings, including articles, speeches, and his autobiography. Louise Carnegie's suite, equally spacious, reflected more elaborate decorative tastes. Her bedroom featured delicate French-style furnishings, fine fabrics, and artwork carefully selected to create an elegant feminine space. Her dressing room contained extensive built-in wardrobes to accommodate the elaborate wardrobe required of a woman of her social position, with separate areas for day dresses, evening gowns, outdoor wear, and accessories. Her private bathroom included particularly luxurious fixtures and finishes, with marble surfaces and the finest porcelain. Louise maintained a sitting room where she received intimate friends, conducted household business with the housekeeper, and spent quiet hours reading or writing correspondence. Margaret Carnegie's rooms occupied a sunny corner of the second floor, designed to evolve with her as she grew from childhood through adolescence into young womanhood. Her bedroom connected to a playroom and schoolroom area, where she received private tutoring, the standard educational arrangement for wealthy families of that era. As Margaret matured, the playroom would be converted into a sitting room, but in the mansion's early years, it contained toys, books, and educational materials appropriate to a young girl's development. Large windows ensured the rooms remained bright and cheerful, and a connecting door allowed access to the nanny's room, where the trained nurse employed to care for Margaret slept. The third floor contained additional guest bedrooms, each carefully appointed to provide comfort for visiting friends and family. Carnegie, despite his wealth, maintained close relationships with relatives from his Scottish past, and these rooms frequently hosted cousins and other family members visiting from Scotland. Each guest room featured a comfortable bed, adequate storage, sitting areas, and private or semi-private bathroom facilities. The decor varied by room, with different color schemes and stylistic approaches, but all maintained the mansion's overall standard of quality and comfort. The mansion's exterior, while more restrained than many Gilded Age palaces, nonetheless commanded attention through its sheer scale and impeccable proportions. The primary facade facing Fifth Avenue stretched 125 feet, presenting a symmetrical composition centered on a formal entrance. The ground floor featured rusticated limestone, creating a substantial base for the brick upper stories. Large windows on the main floor, topped with limestone pediments, indicated the important public rooms within. The upper floors featured smaller windows in regular rhythm, their limestone surrounds creating visual interest against the red brick walls. The roofline incorporated a balustrade that created a finished, classical appearance while concealing the mansion's flat roof from street view. The garden facade, facing the property's interior courtyard, presented a somewhat different character. Here, larger windows opened the main floor rooms to the garden space, bringing natural light deep into the mansion's interior. A terrace extended from the morning room and conservatory area, allowing the family to take fresh air and privacy, shielded from public view by the mansion's walls and strategic landscaping. The garden itself, though necessarily modest in scale given Manhattan's density, included carefully tended plantings, walking paths, and sitting areas where the family could enjoy nature without leaving their property. Construction of the mansion continued through 1901 and into 1902. The total construction cost reached approximately $1.5 million, equivalent to roughly $50 million today, when adjusted for inflation. This represented a substantial but not unprecedented expenditure for a mansion of this scale and quality. Some of Carnegie's contemporaries, notably the Vanderbilts, spent considerably more on their palatial homes. But Carnegie's mansion nonetheless represented one of New York's most significant residential projects of the era. December of 1901 brought the sale of Carnegie Steel Company to J.P. Morgan's United States Steel Corporation for $480 million, making Carnegie one of the wealthiest individuals in human history to that point. Carnegie's personal share of the sale price exceeded $225 million in bonds, generating annual interest income of approximately $15 million, more money than Carnegie could possibly spend on personal expenses, even with his grand new mansion. This sale freed Carnegie to focus entirely on his philanthropic vision, the distribution of his fortune for the public good. The mansion remained unfinished when, on August 11, 1919, Andrew Carnegie died at his summer home in Lenox, Massachusetts. He was 83 years old, and had lived in his Fifth Avenue mansion for less than 17 years. The cause of death was bronchial pneumonia, though Carnegie had been in declining health for several months. He died knowing that he had given away approximately $350 million to various causes, establishing libraries, funding educational institutions, supporting scientific research, and promoting international peace. His estate, valued at approximately $23 million at his death, was modest compared to his peak wealth, testimony to his commitment to dying having distributed his fortune. Louise Carnegie, at age 62 when her husband died, became the mansion's primary occupant. She continued living in the Fifth Avenue residence, maintaining much of the household staff and the mansion's daily routines. Louise survived Andrew by 27 years, dying on June 24, 1946, at age 89. During her widowhood, Louise maintained Andrew's philanthropic commitments, serving on the boards of various Carnegie institutions and continuing to support causes her husband had championed. She entertained less frequently than during Andrew's lifetime, but the mansion remained an important social landmark, and Louise remained a respected figure in New York society. Margaret Carnegie, the couple's only child, married Roswell Miller Jr. in April of 1919, just months before her father's death. Miller came from a prominent railroad family. His father had been president of the Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Paul Railway. The wedding took place at the Carnegie Mansion, a grand society affair attended by New York's elite. Margaret and Roswell had 4 children, making Louise Carnegie a grandmother and ensuring the continuation of the Carnegie family line. Margaret inherited much of her parents' estate upon Louise's death in 1946, becoming one of the wealthiest women in America. The Carnegie Mansion's social role during Andrew Carnegie's lifetime reflected both his immense wealth and his somewhat ambivalent relationship with New York's elite society. While the mansion could certainly accommodate elaborate entertaining, Carnegie himself preferred smaller, more intimate gatherings focused on intellectual conversation rather than mere display. He hosted dinners for notable figures in education, science, literature, and public affairs. The mansion saw visits from presidents, including Theodore Roosevelt and William Howard Taft, along with foreign dignitaries, business leaders, and cultural figures. These gatherings, while certainly luxurious by any ordinary standard, were often described by attendees as surprisingly informal given Carnegie's status, with the host himself preferring substantive conversation to elaborate ceremony. Music remained central to the mansion's cultural life. Carnegie's commitment to supporting music in America manifested not only in his funding of Carnegie Hall, which opened in 1891, but also in the regular musical evenings held at his home. The mansion's music room hosted performances by some of the era's most celebrated musicians. Singers, pianists, and chamber ensembles performed in this intimate setting, often at Carnegie's personal invitation. Carnegie believed that exposure to great music elevated the human spirit, and he used his wealth to bring exceptional musical experiences to both the public through Carnegie Hall and to private gatherings in his home. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 affected Carnegie profoundly. He had devoted considerable energy and resources to promoting international peace, funding the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in 1910 with $10 million. The endowment's stated mission was to hasten the abolition of international war. Carnegie genuinely believed that rational people, given proper education and encouragement, would reject war as a means of resolving disputes. The descent of Europe into mechanized slaughter devastated him emotionally. During the war years, Carnegie's health declined, and while he continued to live in the Fifth Avenue mansion, he became increasingly withdrawn, deeply discouraged by humanity's apparent inability to transcend violence. The mansion during these war years nonetheless continued to function as a major household. Staff maintained the property's immaculate condition, meals were prepared and served according to established routines, and the various mechanical systems, heating, electricity, plumbing, operated reliably. The scale of the mansion required constant attention and maintenance. Windows needed regular cleaning, woodwork required periodic refinishing, fabrics wore and needed replacement, mechanical systems required servicing and repair. The annual cost of maintaining the mansion and its staff exceeded $100,000. A substantial sum but easily affordable given Carnegie's wealth and, later, Louise's inheritance. The neighborhood around the mansion evolved during the Carnegie family's residence there. As Andrew had predicted, Fifth Avenue's wealthy district expanded northward. Additional mansions rose on surrounding blocks, though none exceeded the Carnegie residence in scale. The area became known as part of Millionaires' Row, with successful industrialists, financiers, and prominent families establishing homes in this stretch of Fifth Avenue. The presence of the Carnegie Mansion had indeed helped anchor this development, validating the location as suitable for the city's elite. Central Park, just blocks away, provided a magnificent amenity, and the proximity to museums and cultural institutions made the location increasingly desirable. New York City itself transformed dramatically during the years the Carnegie family occupied the mansion. The population grew from approximately 3.5 million in 1900 to nearly 7 million by the mid-1920s. The skyline changed as steel-frame skyscrapers rose, transforming Lower and Midtown Manhattan into a vertical city unlike anything the world had previously seen. The subway system, just beginning when the Carnegie Mansion was built, expanded into a comprehensive network. Automobiles replaced horse-drawn carriages, fundamentally changing the character of the city's streets. Through all these changes, the Carnegie Mansion remained a constant, its solid Georgian Revival architecture seeming to transcend the fashions of the moment. The mansion's daily operations reflected the rigid social hierarchies of the era. Staff followed strictly defined roles and reporting structures. The butler, as the senior male servant, managed the male staff and oversaw service in the public rooms. The housekeeper supervised female staff and managed the private family spaces. The cook ruled the kitchen, with kitchen maids and scullery maids working under her direction. Ladies' maids attended to Louise and Margaret's personal needs, helping with dressing, hair styling, and clothing maintenance. Footmen served at table, answered doors, and performed various tasks requiring physical strength and formal presentation. Chambermaids cleaned and maintained bedrooms and public rooms. Laundresses handled the enormous volume of linens, clothing, and household textiles. The complexity of managing such a large staff required excellent organizational skills and clear communication of expectations. The mansion's technological systems, cutting edge when installed, required regular updating as technology advanced. Electrical systems needed expansion and modification as new appliances and fixtures became available. The heating system required periodic upgrades to maintain efficiency. Plumbing fixtures wore out and needed replacement. The elevators required regular maintenance and eventually modernization. These upgrades and maintenance activities continued throughout the Carnegie family's residence, ensuring the mansion remained not just livable, but comfortable according to evolving standards. The costs associated with these ongoing improvements represented a significant ongoing investment beyond basic maintenance expenses. Carnegie's philanthropic work continued to expand during his years in the mansion. He had begun funding public libraries in the 1800s, eventually funding the construction of nearly 1,700 libraries in the United States and another 800 libraries internationally. The Carnegie Mansion served as an informal headquarters for this philanthropy, with Carnegie's personal staff coordinating grant applications, reviewing proposals, and managing the distribution of funds. Carnegie established the Carnegie Institute of Pittsburgh in 1895, the Carnegie Institution for Science in 1902, the Carnegie Hero Fund in 1904, and the Carnegie Corporation of New York in 1911. Each of these institutions received substantial endowments, millions of dollars that would continue funding their work long after Carnegie's death. The Carnegie Corporation of New York, established with $125 million, represented Carnegie's attempt to institutionalize his philanthropy beyond his lifetime. The corporation's mission was to promote the advancement and diffusion of knowledge and understanding. After Carnegie's death, the corporation continued operating, making grants to educational institutions, libraries, and various causes aligned with Carnegie's original vision. The mansion itself would eventually connect to this institution in ways Carnegie could not have anticipated during his lifetime. Louise Carnegie's widowhood brought subtle changes to the mansion's atmosphere and use. While she maintained the house in excellent condition and retained most of the staff, the scale of entertaining decreased. Louise was not reclusive. She maintained social connections and hosted gatherings, but the mansion's grand public rooms saw less use than during Andrew's lifetime. The library remained important to Louise, who was an avid reader, and the morning room served as her primary daily living space. The music room continued to see use, as Louise shared Andrew's love of music, though the musical evenings became less frequent. The Great Depression, beginning with the stock market crash in October of 1929, transformed American society, but affected the Carnegie household relatively little. Louise's wealth, derived primarily from bonds and conservative investments rather than equities, remained largely intact. The mansion continued to operate with a full staff at a time when many Americans faced unemployment and destitution. Louise increased her charitable activities during these years, recognizing the extraordinary need created by economic catastrophe. The contrast between the mansion's continued luxury and the desperate poverty visible in the city's streets highlighted the economic inequality that characterized American society during this period. World War II brought different challenges. The early years of the war before American entry following Pearl Harbor in December 1941 saw Louise supporting various relief efforts for Britain and Allied nations. After American entry into the war, the mansion participated in the home front effort in modest ways. Louise supported war bond drives and various charitable efforts supporting servicemen. Some members of the household staff left for military service or war work, requiring adjustments to the mansion's operations. The war years represented a period of relative austerity, even for the wealthy, with rationing of various goods and a general sense that ostentatious display was inappropriate given the national sacrifice. Louise Carnegie died on June 24, 1946, survived by her daughter Margaret and 4 grandchildren. Her death marked the end of an era for the Fifth Avenue mansion. Margaret Carnegie Miller, now in her late 40s, faced decisions about the property's future. The costs of maintaining the mansion remained substantial, while the practical utility of such a large residence for one family seemed increasingly questionable in mid-20th century America. Estate taxes on Louise's fortune were significant, and the family's financial advisors needed to develop strategies for managing these obligations while preserving wealth for future generations. Margaret ultimately decided not to maintain the mansion as a private residence. The decision reflected both practical and philosophical considerations. The mansion required at least 15 to 20 staff members for proper operation, an increasingly difficult and expensive requirement in post-war America. The property taxes on the valuable Fifth Avenue land were substantial and rising. More fundamentally, the social world that had created such houses had largely disappeared. The grand entertaining that these mansions were designed to accommodate had given way to smaller, more informal social patterns. Multi-generational households occupying single residences had become rare among the wealthy, who increasingly preferred multiple smaller properties over single palatial homes. In 1946, Margaret Carnegie Miller and the trustees of Louise Carnegie's estate entered into negotiations with the Carnegie Corporation of New York regarding the mansion's future. These discussions led to an innovative arrangement. The mansion would be donated to the Carnegie Corporation with the stipulation that it be used for public benefit in a manner consistent with Andrew Carnegie's philanthropic vision. The corporation, after careful consideration of various options, decided to establish the mansion as the Cooper Hewitt Museum, a museum of decorative arts and design. The choice of the Cooper Hewitt as the mansion's new tenant connected to Andrew Carnegie's relationship with Cooper Union. Peter Cooper, founder of Cooper Union, had been someone Carnegie admired, and the Cooper Union Museum had been seeking a new home for its extensive collections of decorative arts and design objects. The Carnegie Mansion, with its appropriate scale, excellent condition, and convenient location, seemed ideal for this purpose. The transition from private residence to public museum required extensive planning and adaptation, but the basic structure and quality of the mansion made this conversion feasible. The conversion process began in 1947 and required several years to complete properly. The mansion's interior needed adaptation to museum purposes while preserving its architectural and historical integrity. Public access required new entrance arrangements, installation of appropriate security systems, climate control modifications to protect collections, and accessibility improvements. Some original interior elements were preserved as part of the museum experience, allowing visitors to understand the mansion's residential past. Other areas were modified to create appropriate gallery spaces for exhibitions. The garden was redesigned as a public sculpture garden, transforming private outdoor space into a public amenity. The Cooper Hewitt Museum officially opened in the Carnegie Mansion on October 3, 1976, coinciding with the American Bicentennial celebrations. The opening marked the culmination of decades of planning, fundraising, and renovation work. The museum's collections, transferred from the Cooper Union, included exceptional holdings of furniture, textiles, wallpaper, decorative objects, and design drawings spanning several centuries and multiple cultures. The mansion provided approximately 20 galleries for permanent and temporary exhibitions, along with space for museum administration, conservation workshops, and a research library. The museum's establishment in the Carnegie Mansion created an institution unique in the American museum landscape. Unlike art museums focused primarily on fine arts, Cooper Hewitt concentrated on decorative arts and design, exploring how objects shape daily life and how design influences human experience. This mission aligned well with Andrew Carnegie's belief in practical education and improvement of ordinary life through exposure to beauty and quality. The mansion itself became part of the museum's narrative, its architecture and original elements illustrating the highest level of residential design and craftsmanship from the early 20th century. The preservation and adaptation of the Carnegie Mansion for museum use required ongoing investment and care. The original mechanical systems, while well-built, required replacement and upgrading to meet modern museum standards. Climate control systems maintaining stable temperature and humidity necessary for preservation of fragile objects were installed. Modern electrical systems supporting contemporary lighting, security, and communications technology were threaded through the historic structure. Accessibility improvements, including the installation of an accessible entrance and elevator access to all floors, ensured the museum could welcome all visitors regardless of physical ability. These interventions were carefully designed to preserve the mansion's historic character while enabling its new public function. The mansion's exterior remained largely unchanged through the conversion to museum use. The Fifth Avenue facade continued to present the dignified Georgian Revival composition created by Babb, Cook, and Willard. The brick and limestone exterior required periodic maintenance, repointing of mortar, cleaning of stone, replacement of deteriorated elements, but the essential character remained constant. The mansion continued to anchor its block of Fifth Avenue, now standing among a mixture of remaining historic residences, apartment buildings, and the museums of Museum Mile. Central Park, visible from the mansion's upper windows, remained the green lung of Manhattan, unchanged in location, though its surrounding urban context had transformed dramatically. The garden underwent significant redesign for its public function. The original private garden, intimate and sheltered, was reimagined as a public sculpture garden featuring works from the museum's collection and temporary installations. The garden became an important public space, a rare outdoor area in dense Manhattan where visitors could rest, reflect, and experience sculpture and design in an outdoor setting. The garden's design respected the mansion's architecture, while creating a distinct contemporary space, demonstrating how historic properties can accommodate new uses without sacrificing their essential character. The museum's interpretation strategy included preserving certain rooms in states suggesting their original residential use. The Carnegie family's dining room, for instance, retained its mahogany paneling and built-in sideboards, allowing visitors to understand the space's original function, even as it also served as gallery space. The grand staircase remained largely as built, its craftsmanship evident to museum visitors ascending to upper-floor galleries. The library, Andrew Carnegie's personal sanctuary, became a particularly important interpretive space, its built-in bookcases and comfortable character evoking the mansion's domestic past, while also housing museum research materials. Later renovations and expansions continued adapting the mansion to evolving museum needs. In 2011, the museum closed for a comprehensive renovation addressing deferred maintenance, improving public amenities, and creating additional gallery and program space. This project, costing over $60 million, included structural repairs, complete replacement of mechanical systems, restoration of decorative elements, and creation of new accessible entrances and improved visitor facilities. The work required several years to complete, with the museum reopening in December 2014. The renovation demonstrated the ongoing commitment necessary to preserve significant historic properties while maintaining their utility for contemporary purposes. Throughout these transformations, the Carnegie Mansion has remained a testament to American Gilded Age wealth and philanthropy. The building embodies Andrew Carnegie's particular combination of ambition, practicality, and cultural aspiration. Unlike some Gilded Age mansions built purely for display, the Carnegie Mansion always balanced grandeur with livability, incorporating the latest technology alongside traditional craftsmanship. Carnegie's vision of wealth as a trust to be administered for public benefit found ultimate expression in the mansion's transformation from private residence to public museum, ensuring that the building continues serving educational purposes consistent with Carnegie's values. The mansion's survival stands in contrast to the fate of many comparable New York residences from the same era. Vanderbilt mansions that once lined Fifth Avenue have been demolished, replaced by commercial buildings and apartment towers. The Astor Mansion, the Gould Mansion, and numerous other palatial homes fell to the wrecking ball as economic pressures and changing social patterns made their maintenance impractical, and their locations too valuable for continued residential use. The Carnegie Mansion's survival resulted from the family's decision to donate rather than sell the property, combined with the Carnegie Corporation's commitment to finding an appropriate public use that would justify the costs of preservation and adaptation. Today, the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum, the institution became part of the Smithsonian in 1967, continues operating in the Carnegie Mansion. The building serves hundreds of thousands of visitors annually, offering exhibitions, educational programs, and research resources exploring design's role in shaping human experience. The mansion itself, now more than 120 years old, requires continuous care and periodic major investments to combat the inevitable effects of time and use. The costs of maintaining the property remain substantial, funded through a combination of admissions revenue, government support, and private fundraising. The commitment to this maintenance reflects recognition of the building's historical and architectural significance beyond its museum function. The Carnegie Mansion tells multiple interconnected stories. It narrates Andrew Carnegie's personal journey from impoverished Scottish immigrant to American industrial titan and philanthropist. It illustrates the extraordinary wealth concentration of America's Gilded Age and the palatial residences this wealth produced. It demonstrates early 20th century technological innovation in residential construction and domestic convenience. It exemplifies the evolution of American residential architecture, showcasing how European classical traditions were adapted to American contexts and clients. It reveals the social world of New York's elite, the households they maintained, and the staff required to operate them. Finally, it demonstrates how historic properties can be successfully adapted to new uses, serving contemporary needs while preserving historical character and significance. Andrew Carnegie's legacy extends far beyond the mansion that bears his name. The libraries he funded continue serving communities worldwide. The educational institutions he established continue their work. The Carnegie Corporation of New York continues making grants consistent with his philanthropic vision. The various foundations and trusts he established continue operating more than a century after his death. Carnegie's vision of wealth as a responsibility rather than merely a privilege, his commitment to practical philanthropy creating tangible public benefits, and his belief in education and cultural enrichment as paths to human improvement continue influencing philanthropic practice. The mansion stands as one physical embodiment of this legacy, a building created through industrial wealth and now serving public education and cultural enrichment. The Carnegie family's story encompasses both triumph and tragedy, representing a particularly American narrative. William and Margaret Carnegie's desperate immigration fleeing poverty in Scotland, young Andrew's determination and extraordinary rise, the accumulation of world historical wealth, the creation of a family seat in New York's most prestigious neighborhood, and the ultimate decision to dedicate that property to public benefit rather than private dynastic continuation. This arc captures essential elements of American mythology while remaining grounded in documented historical fact. The mansion itself serves as a monument to this narrative, its brick and stone bearing witness to more than a century of American social, economic, and cultural history. The preservation of the Carnegie Mansion demonstrates the importance of thoughtful decision-making regarding historic properties. Margaret Carnegie Miller's choice to donate rather than sell the property, accepting tax benefits rather than market value, enabled the building's survival for public benefit. The Carnegie Corporation's decision to adapt the property as a museum rather than selling for redevelopment prioritized cultural values over financial return. These decisions required vision and commitment, recognizing that some properties possess significance transcending their immediate market value. The continued investment in the building's maintenance and adaptation demonstrates ongoing commitment to these values. Current and future challenges facing the Carnegie Mansion include the same issues confronting all historic buildings in active use. Physical deterioration requires continuous monitoring and periodic major interventions. Systems installed during earlier renovations eventually require replacement. Evolving accessibility standards and visitor expectations necessitate ongoing adaptation. Climate change presents new challenges, with more extreme weather events stressing building systems and historic materials. Rising costs of skilled labor and specialized materials for historic preservation increase maintenance expenses. These challenges require sustained commitment and adequate resources to address successfully. The mansion's role in Museum Mile, the stretch of Fifth Avenue adjacent to Central Park that contains numerous major museums, contributes to one of the world's great concentrations of cultural institutions. The Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Guggenheim Museum, the Newey Gallery, the Jewish Museum, and several other institutions share this district with Cooper Hewitt. The Carnegie Mansion fits naturally into this cultural landscape, its residential past and museum present bridging the area's history as a wealthy residential district and its current identity as a cultural destination. The building's scale and character, more domestic than monumental, provides interesting contrast to purpose-built museum structures like the Guggenheim. Inside the mansion, visitors experience spaces ranging from grand public rooms to intimate domestic areas, from soaring entrance halls to comfortable libraries, from formal dining rooms to converted gallery spaces. This variety creates a visitor experience more complex and intimate than typical museum visits, with the building itself contributing substantially to the experience. The mansion's original craftsmanship, carved woodwork, decorative plasterwork, marble fireplaces, intricate parquet floors, provides constant visual interest even in spaces serving as neutral gallery backgrounds. The building teaches through its very existence, demonstrating construction quality, architectural design, and domestic arrangements from its era. The Carnegie Mansion's location in Manhattan's Upper East Side places it within walking distance of Central Park's Conservatory Garden, the Museum Mile institutions, and numerous other cultural and educational resources. The surrounding neighborhood, while changed from Carnegie's day, retains considerable residential character, with apartment buildings housing affluent New Yorkers having replaced most of the former private mansions. The area remains one of Manhattan's most prestigious addresses, though residential patterns have shifted from single-family mansions to luxury apartment buildings. The mansion itself stands as a reminder of an earlier era's residential patterns, now almost entirely vanished from Manhattan. The relationship between the Carnegie Mansion and Andrew Carnegie's other major architectural legacy, Carnegie Hall, provides interesting perspective on his approach to architecture and public space. Carnegie Hall, opened in 1891, was conceived as a gift to New York City, a performance venue that would make great music accessible to wider audiences. The mansion, built a decade later, served private family needs but incorporated similar values: quality construction, technological innovation, and spaces designed to enhance rather than merely display wealth. Both buildings survived threats of demolition through private and public commitment to preservation, and both continue serving educational and cultural purposes in the 21st century. Carnegie's writings and public statements provide context for understanding his approach to wealth and its uses. In The Gospel of Wealth, Carnegie argued that wealthy individuals should live modestly, provide moderately for dependents, and dedicate surplus wealth to public benefit. Yet Carnegie's mansion, while perhaps modest compared to some contemporary residences, nonetheless represented substantial expenditure on private comfort and convenience. This apparent contradiction reflects the complexity of Carnegie's philosophy. He believed in using wealth to improve society, but did not embrace asceticism. He saw no contradiction in living comfortably while dedicating the majority of his fortune to philanthropy. The staff who maintained the Carnegie Mansion throughout its residential period remain largely anonymous in historical records. While household account books and some correspondence survive, detailed information about individual servants' lives and experiences is scarce. This erasure of working-class experience from historical record is common, with documentation focusing on wealthy owners rather than the workers who made households function. The physical spaces these workers occupied, the service stairs, the servants' hall, the upper floor bedrooms, survive in the building, but their original occupants are largely forgotten, known primarily through their roles rather than as individuals with full lives and stories. The technological systems installed in the Carnegie Mansion reflected contemporary cutting-edge innovation, but also required the labor of numerous workers to maintain and operate. The heating system needed firemen to tend boilers, the electrical system required maintenance and occasional repair, the elevators needed operators and mechanics, the kitchen equipment needed cleaning and servicing. Modern museum systems replace many of these labor-intensive requirements with automated systems, but the essential need for skilled maintenance workers continues. The building's ongoing operation depends on electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, carpenters, and other skilled trades workers whose labor keeps historic systems functioning and modern adaptations operating reliably. Andrew Carnegie's autobiography, published in 1920, provides his own perspective on his life and work. Written in his final years, the autobiography emphasizes Carnegie's rise from poverty, his business success, and his philanthropic accomplishments. The mansion receives relatively little attention in Carnegie's own narrative, mentioned primarily in passing rather than described in detail. This restraint reflects Carnegie's professed belief that personal luxuries were less important than public benefits. Whether this represented genuine conviction or calculated public relations remains debatable, but Carnegie's actions, giving away the vast majority of his fortune rather than establishing a great dynastic fortune, suggest authentic commitment to his stated principles. The preservation movement in America grew substantially during the 20th century, with increasing recognition that historic buildings possess cultural value, justifying preservation efforts even at considerable expense. The Carnegie Mansion benefited from this evolving consciousness, with its preservation and adaptation as a museum reflecting values that might not have prevailed in earlier eras. The building's survival required alignment of multiple factors: family willingness to donate, institutional capacity to accept and adapt the property, available financial resources for renovation and ongoing operation, and public interest supporting continued investment. The successful combination of these factors enabled the mansion's preservation and continued public service. Current museum practice emphasizes accessibility, inclusion, and diverse storytelling. The Cooper Hewitt Museum, like cultural institutions generally, works to present exhibitions and programs serving broad audiences rather than narrow elite constituencies. This democratic impulse aligns well with Andrew Carnegie's own stated beliefs about education and culture serving to improve society broadly. The mansion itself, created by extreme wealth concentration and designed for exclusive private use, now serves an inclusive public mission, embodying a kind of social transformation Carnegie himself advocated. Whether he would recognize or approve of all contemporary museum practices remains unknowable, but the basic principle of private wealth supporting public benefit continues. The mansion's future depends on continued commitment to preservation and appropriate use. The building requires ongoing investment to combat deterioration and maintain functionality. Museum operations need adequate funding to maintain programs, care for collections, and serve visitors effectively. Public support, both financial and political, remains essential for sustaining the institution. The building's survival for another century requires the same kind of thoughtful stewardship that has preserved it thus far: recognition of its historical significance, commitment to its maintenance, and creative adaptation ensuring its continued utility and relevance. Standing today on Fifth Avenue, the Carnegie Mansion presents an impressive, but not overwhelming presence. The red brick and limestone exterior weathers gracefully, the proportions remain satisfying, the overall composition retains the dignity intended by its designers more than a century ago. The building speaks of permanence and quality, values that Andrew Carnegie prized. Inside, visitors encounter spaces created for private luxury now serving public education, walking through rooms where one of history's wealthiest men once lived, now exploring exhibitions examining how design shapes human experience. This transformation from private mansion to public museum represents a particular kind of American story, one where private wealth ultimately serves public benefit, where exclusive spaces become inclusive, where the past continues serving present needs. The untold story of the Carnegie family estate encompasses more than architectural description or biographical narrative. It illustrates how buildings embody the values and contradictions of their eras, how they adapt to changing social needs, and how they serve as physical connection to historical moments and movements. The mansion connects us to Andrew Carnegie's remarkable life journey, to the extraordinary wealth concentration of America's Gilded Age, To the skilled craftsmen who built these monuments, to the workers who maintain them, to the changing patterns of American domestic life, and to evolving ideas about wealth, responsibility, and public benefit. These stories continue unfolding as the building serves new generations, proving that even the finest private palaces can, through thoughtful adaptation, serve democratic purposes and continuing education. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Carnegie Mansion's remarkable history here on the Dark Estate. If you found this exploration of Andrew Carnegie's family home fascinating, please subscribe to our channel for more in-depth investigations of America's most historically significant mansions. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling us what you thought of this story, and let us know which historic estate you'd like us to explore next. Until our next journey into the shadows of history, remember that these buildings hold stories more compelling than any fiction, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond the facade.